And looks like we're live. We started this session early, so we'll give it a couple minutes for everybody to join in. All right. I hope I'm audible. I hope Prince is also audible. Hey, Prince.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Hi, Arshad.
All right. Myself, I'm joining in from India right now. Prince is also joining in from India. Would love to know where you're all tuning in from. If this is your first time at TestMu Conf, do let us know. Feel free to express it in the chat window that you see on the right side. Myself, I'm tuning in from Delhi, India right now. Prince is also here with me in the same place, the same office. Of course, you could say it in our
Indeed.
titles. We both work for TestMu AI. That's nothing news for anybody. But yeah, I see that somebody has joined in from Sweden for the very first time. So glad to have you. And
Oh, from
I can see a lot of people tuning in from US now, Barcelona, Pakistan, Boston. Amazing. So we have people from all around the globe. Somebody from Phyllis, and of course, folks from India,
from India.
Frankfurt. So good to have you all on board. Always good to see people tuning in from different places, different and brought onto the same place for the same purpose, that's learning, especially in the age of AI, where quality is changing at such massive pace. But yeah, I think that's good to know. And now we are ready to go live. So let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to TestMuCon 2026. I'm Harshit Paul, uh, Director of Product Marketing at TestMu AI, and I'll be your host for this session, which is about confidence not being equal to correctness, the agentic validation loop. An AI agent sounds exactly as confident when it's wrong as when it's right. And you've probably seen this, multiple times. An agent rewrites a failing test until it passes and then reports the green check, over a broken system. So is that green check mark actually worth something? That's what we're going to find out. But before we get started, a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, so in case you need to drop off in the middle of the session, don't worry, you'll get the full recording over your registered email address. We'll also be uploading the videos over TestMu AI YouTube channel, so feel free to go ahead and subscribe. While we are presenting the session, you can go ahead and express your questions in the chat window. We'll be having a dedicated Q&A round at the end, and we also have a very exciting social media challenge going on. So in case there's something you want to take back from the session and just give it out on social media, by all means go ahead and do that. Use the hashtag testmeconf. And with that said, let's get back to the green check mark, because most teams have no way to tell a real green check versus a manufactured one, and you have to ship with whatever the agent is telling you to ship with. But that's what we're going to look at, understanding the difference between the right validation. And for that, I have with me Prince, VP of Engineering of TestMu AI. He has been building the engineering platforms that we have on our platform right now. Kane AI being one of them, our end-to-end testing agent, and that's what Prince is going to talk more about.
Yeah.
Prince, good to
Thank you,
have you.
Arshad. Thank you. Thank you, Arshad, for, for doing a lovely introduction for me and for the talk all about it. So just let me quickly share my screen. And then, okay. Hi, everyone. I think Harsha did a very fabulous introduction about me, and the talk is more about confidence isn't correctness. And if you met me last year, we had in the last year TestMu conference. The talk was more about, and the systems back then were more about giving prompts and getting scripts out of it. And this was very true for a long period of time. And then agentic loops started, agentic loops and uh, general loops started. With loops coming in place, human intervention dropped rapidly. Now, this was very true when we had a system where the code was reviewed manually. But over a period of time and over the last year, we've seen agentic loops and graph loops being in the system, being used by a lot of developers and the entire engineering altogether. Now, the problem that we see with these agentic loops is they are very confident about shipping things. They are very confident about generating tests. They are very confident about generating UTs, and at the end get a green mark out of it. This is a problem that is what the talk is going to be all about. And the problem that we're trying to solve is, how do we move from just getting a green check to actually, is it actually safe enough to go on production? Now, definitely, current systems, current harnesses, Cloud Code, Codex can generate code, can generate test cases, can generate green results in minutes. But are they good enough to go on production? That's the problem that everyone is facing right now. Agents can see the code, agents can see the context that it has been supplied, but the biggest problem that we see is they work in a self-referential loop. What I mean hereby is they are working on the same piece of code, which manages the test cases, which manages the test and everything else, but they do not have the context of the exact delivery that has to be made. A wrong code generates a wrong UT, generates a wrong test case, which gets shipped on production. And then it basically leads you down production impact or something similar. Now, just to give you, we are not trying to slow down the delivery. We want to make sure that the current systems or the current harnesses that you might be using are at par and is able to deliver something that you are confident about without being in the loop of having a green check or a red check. Now, just to understand, why agents could be confident about it, I'll just move to the next slide. Let's take an example. You were having a white-coded platform, and you just added an SSO login. And we here at TestMu AI have a lot of platforms internally created by sales teams, product teams that actually manages and orchestrate a lot of workflows in a day-to-day life. And this could not be production-facing. This is an internal tool that we're talking about. Now, your team actually added an SSO. The Agentic Loop or the Agentic platform that you might be using did add the SSO. It worked fine and everything else worked fine. But in the fly, it actually broke the username and the password login, which is what we've been seeing for a long period of time. And the problem here is, yes, the same system writes a test, the same system writes the code, and the same system approves the code, which is a critical check mark that needs to be fulfilled, a void in the system or in the harness that you might be using. Static code reading can give you the context or give the LLM or the agent the context that is coded, but it might not give you the entire context of the entire project. So a loop or an agent working on a specific segment of your feature or a fix or a bug is just going to fix that specific segment. This is where the confidence problems arises from. The agent knows it has done its task. The agent delivers its task. The agent tests that task, but it doesn't know what else has to be broken or what else is broken altogether. Now, we need to understand that you cannot derive tests from altogether from the test code or the code itself. We need to derive from the requirement that was generated. Now, this is what the assurance puzzle is all about, or the assurance problem, to be very frank. Conventional systems or the conventional system pre-LLM era usually used to have wherein you wrote a piece of code, which was a test code. It either could be a Selenium script or a Python script or something similar on that front, and you just replayed it. This was fine in the system wherein you were authoring the code, you had a good control of the code, and you were able to actually trust the code that was generated by yourself, or even pre-agentic loop era, which is probably less than a year ago. This was there, very good. This was the conventional starting point that everyone had. But since then, things have changed. And what we understand is required are 6 different capabilities that are on the presentation slide, definitely. And I'll just walk them one by one. The very first being, source-based intent, which means a feature or a bug or a fix that you might be working on has to be derived from a source. It could be a description, it could be a PRD, it could be a ticket, it could be anything and everything, a source material to be more precise. And the testing has to be derived from the requirement, not from the piece of code that the agent wrote. The second is trust states, which is, has the requirement changed? Has the requirement evolved? What are the stale works? What is a new work? Say you removed the user login flow that we were talking earlier, and you just replaced it via SSO. It doesn't make any sense to actually test those username and password flows altogether, or a negative testing of the same scenario. Has it been actually removed? So that's a trust state. Verifiable design is what we call a human in the loop, which means you provide a requirement, same way you ask your agents to write code, you go through the review of the test cases, the acceptance criteria, the use cases and stuff like that. Once reviewed, once it's good looks good to me, you actually author a test out of it. And the most important part, an execution record. So we've seen in the cases, we've seen in the past, and we've also heard on the news and in the frontier labs that agents were able to escape sandboxes and mount just to get the task completed. So say you gave Claude Code overnight goal to probably make all the test cases green or make all the tests green. It's going to keep on trying to fix it, but there might come a time that it might just comment out the test cases and just give you a green out of it. And we've done in the past. I mean, like the developers and the QAs, we've basically done it. All the engineers have done it in the past. You just comment out the test cases, you just comment out the unit test cases, and you just want the CI to be green. Agents can do that. And how do you stop that? You need something verifiable, non-mutable, that cannot be edited. And if it's altered, it actually changes the history out of it, which is what the evidence record is all about. The fifth point, or the fifth capability that we need to solve this assurance puzzle is proved versus own, which means I know, or at least the end user who's going to take a call if this has to be delivered on production or for your customers or for your internal usage, what has been covered in the testing and what are the remaining gaps. So we test the system, or in a way, we know what is available on the system, right? But you also should know what are the gaps in the system that cannot be tested and which might require a manual intervention in general. That's the gap that we're talking about. And the most critical important point, the change drift. You do not build a system in a single go. You do not write a piece of code that goes on productions, runs for eternity, and is there forever. This is what the change awareness is all about. And this is a capability that all the agentic loops and harnesses must have. A change introduced in the system should be able to get the drift in the piece of code, in the drift in the test cases, in the acceptance criteria, and so on and so forth. This is what the change awareness is all about. So this is one part of assurance puzzle, or assuring that a system is good enough after an agentic change to go on production. And we understand all these 6 capabilities are very required when any agent harness, be it Hermes, be it OpenClaw, be it Claude Code, Copilot, anything that you're using on, or even white coding platforms like Replit, Lovable that you might be using. All these 6 capabilities are very required to ship anything on production or in your environment, prod environment, very confidently. Now, with all of this 6 present in your system or in your harness, the most important point is what happened in the test. You might not be present while the entire test is running, or while the entire agent is running, to be more precise. You give it a requirement, you come back tomorrow morning or probably in a couple of hours and then see the results. This is what we call as the evidence problem. Now, it does coincides with the 4th point that I mentioned, the evidence record. But yeah, the evidence problem is something that is very critically required for any agentic loops to be able to generate verifiable information that can be used by the reviewer as a human reviewer, or by a different age system altogether, to actually take a call if this is good enough to go on production or not. Now, this is one case where evidence problem needs to be solved in the agentic loop, but take another instance altogether. You want your auditor to actually test or to actually audit what was ran, against which build, against which requirement. All of this trace has to be done down in an evidence that can be shipped and sent to someone else who can review it. And it could include everything, screenshots, CI logs, the context of what the PRD was, the build version, anything and everything else out of it. So the whole requirement of evidence is you are able to trace back the requirement, the build, the observed artifact during that run, and then be able to complete an entire loop of validation there. Now, we were facing this problem during the starting of the year itself. A lot of our developers, or a lot of our engineers itself, they do have their own agents or harnesses set up. I myself use Hermes extensively, and I have my own Hermes agent set up to manage my day-to-day life. Now, we solved this problem. We figured out, we need to find out a solution that fits each agent or each loop or each agent that you might be having. And it should not be a proprietary thing that cannot be plugged anywhere and everywhere else, which is what we kind of released Kane CLI about a couple of weeks ago. Now, Kane CLI is, just to let you know, it's not a normal authoring agent. This is not we're trying to ship and tell our users and tell our customers to use. This is more of a validation layer for agentic coding loops. Okay, agentic coding graphs, to be more precise. I mean, like graph engineering has just evolved a lot. It's a validation layer for your agentic harness that you might be having, and your harness could be anything. We really do not care about if it's a proprietary harness that you might have, or if it's an open source harness that you might be using, or it's a paid harness, probably something like Replicate or Lovable. We just want to be the validation layer for the entire agentic harness or the agentic loop system altogether. And this layer actually helps you define, is this release good enough to go on production? Now, Kane CLI by design is expected to work and is definitely going to work for your local browsers, for your emulators and simulators, and we're definitely bringing out real devices as well soon. And it can be plugged anywhere. It can be plugged in your agents, it can be plugged in your PRs, it can be plugged in your CI, it can be plugged in your harness workflows and stuff like that. What Kane CLI needs is just your input, your PRD, your user acceptance criteria, your Jira tickets, your workflow tickets, or any workflow that you might have that you really want to give pushback to Kane CLI. It can take any format of data. And what it's going to output you is an execution record, what happened during the execution, and using that, you'll be able to take a call. I'll definitely show a work that I've triggered in the past that actually helps you out to take a call. Now, this fits all the harnesses. We're not trying to explicitly tie down to one specific harnesses. And by the way, it also runs on your local terminal, so you really do not need to have a harness to leverage it. You can still run it on your terminal commands and make it work. Now, the important part is this is not an automation runner. This is not something you're trying to replace an automation runner. This is more of a validation layer. And these are the capabilities that we have. So the very first thing, I think this has been there in the market for a pretty long time, natural language control. Now, Kane CLI can accept a high-level objective. And when I say a high-level objective, you can just throw an objective like, go to make my trip and book me a flight from Delhi to Frankfurt. That's it. It's going to do that. And yes, it's an objective-led approach. It's not a selector-led approach. So anything that breaks, it's just going to auto-heal automatically. We also devised TestMD framework, which is an MD markdown format data, which can be, again, read by the human. It's a human in the loop, and again, read by the agents as well. The third is auto-heal. So Kane itself has inherently built auto-heal. You do not have to worry about a flaky locator or a cosmetic drift to the UI. You change just a login button to say sign in. It's just going to manage everything out of the box. You do not have to worry about it. The harnesses, how does it communicate with harnesses? So we use NDJSON as a basic communication mechanism between your harnesses. It could be Hermes, it could be OpenClaw, it could be anything. And this is how it communicates with all the agents altogether. The most important part of Kane CLI is it can also emit you out a piece of code that you can run locally. It could be Playwright, it could be Selenium. At the moment, we support Playwright, but yeah, it can just emit you a Playwright code which you can run specifically on your local and move out of the harness if you really want to, which I highly doubt people are going to do. And it can also ingest your Playwright code or any Selenium code or anything that you have in your framework and emit out an MD format or MD data, which the Kane CLI can consume or the harness can consume, which means you can always throw back your original piece of code, test code, and it's going to automate it on Kane CLI. Now, proprietary, we do support variables and secrets by default, which is again a part of Kane CLI. The another capability that we add is called ask tool, which is it knows where to stop. It's not a standard QA agent, which is just going to get the goal done. It knows where to stop, and it will always stop and ask you for input until unless you do not provide an input, it's not going to move it. Shareable evidence is the evidence pack that we're talking about, which I'll definitely show in a run. And it's everything, all the artifacts, all the RCA, what field, white field, everything and everything is in the pack itself, which can be again explored by your agents or your harnesses that you might be using. And yes, as I mentioned, it's not a QA agent. It's going to discover the bugs on the fly. So say you have two logout buttons, one on the navigation bar, one on the left pane, and your navigation bar logout button is broken. It's going to report you that the button is broken and then move ahead in the system. Now, yeah, we do understand all the capabilities are there, and this kind of fulfills the requirements that I raised earlier, but how does it fit in your system or in your agentic coding loop altogether? Now, it's pretty simple. Your agent writes a code. Your agents actually make the changes, code changes, fixes, bugs, and anything and everything. Kane CLI has a skill that you can install in your agent, and it just works in all the agents by default. Or you can call via Kane CLI, activate Kane CLI. It's going to spin up a real emulator or a simulator or a local browser on a machine, attain that objective that the agent actually wrote a code for with the context that was originally provided to the agent, run a test, author it, and it can be added back in your test suite or your regression suite altogether. So, and it's just going to work on context, nothing from the original source code that the agent wrote. Now, over the time, you can use this to compound your coverage and can help you figure out if this is a call that you need to take on production or not. Now, what we're trying to achieve here is features to ship with inspectable evidences attached. So any features, any fixes, any iterations that you make on the system, you have an evidence attached to it, which you are able to confidently take it on production with all the acceptance criteria and all the coverage that you might require on the system before you take it on production. Now, this was more of about, the talk. I'm just going to show you a demo. So I use Hermes, as I mentioned earlier, right? Hermes is an agentic harness that you can use to manage your system day-to-day life, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people would be using it. It's similar to OpenClaw, but exactly not OpenClaw. It has a lot of personalization that I really need in a day-to-day life. Now, I'll just quickly share my screen for the other one. So I use Hermes on Telegram, very frankly, and I think you can see my screen. Perfect. You can see my screen now. So I'll just go back to the thread. So 99acres, we created a PRD for 99acres about a search tool that 99acres has. So 99acres, for people who don't know, it's an company that actually helps you search properties in Indian market and probably somewhere else as well. This was a mock PRD that we created. I just asked, Kane CLI to ingest this context and create the use cases out of it. And by the way, Hermes already had a skill internally installed in it. So yeah, it started ingesting it, and this was running in the background. This is yesterday that I triggered all together. And it created probably 4 use cases that are relevant to the PRD requirement that I had actually shared. It shared me, a search property listing, browser refine and search results, contact post early about listing, and stuff like that. Now, I did pick one of the things, which is, search property listing, and let's design test cases around search property listing. I'm like, that's one big feature, which should work, right? And it took some time. Definitely, it took like 6 minutes to probably generate 24 acceptance criteria, 11 scenarios, and 5 identified gaps as well, and then everything. And these are the design test cases that I do. It gave me one example, and this is my Hermes actually doing. So on the fly as well, I have a rule in my Hermes that it doesn't blocks and takes a call internally, which is what I'll show you later in the conversation thread as well. I just asked it to, generate all the test cases that has been generated. It did give me like, probably 11 test cases. One of them being, 0 test results, unique near matches, which means if I make a spelling mistake, I should get the results of the nearby cities. I just picked it and said, can you also find, okay, so this statement is, my Hermes is configured in a way where it doesn't prompt me every time, and it takes a call automatically on the context that it has. And this is the power of agentic loops and agentic harnesses altogether. So it automatically took all my context that it had and pre-filled all the variables that was generated in the test cases. One of them being start URL, expected state rows, and stuff like that. I just gave it 3 and just asked it to fill all from the context itself. It filled them up, and then I asked it to run the T4 test case. So the T4 test case was about a spelling error that you might do. Once it ran, and the very first test that it ran, for some reason, 99acres, and I'm pretty happy that this was a good test case that 99acres was helping me out on. It generated an access denied. It threw me a 403. Now, my agent, or Hermes to be more precise, was able to capture all the information and point it back to me. Okay, 403 was generated by 99acres. I did retry it once more, and then the test was automatically completed, which is good enough. I did try it once more time. Again, the test was completed. So it could be something that 99acres could have detected that I might be using a bot to automate the test. Sorry for that. But once the test was completed, and I could definitely run all the test cases for this specific demo, I asked it to share the evidence files. And this is the conversation that I'm having with my agent. You could be using anything altogether. Generate me the evidence file for the last run and the run that had 403. It took out 2 binary files and gave me to download. Now, I'll show you what these binary files are. Let me just download them quickly. And yes. So yes, I'm on the correct screen. So this is what the evidence is all about. So evidence.lambda test is hosted already. This is a standalone evidence, standalone platform wherein you can just drop the binary that you downloaded, which is .evidence. Now, once you open it, you'll see all the test cases that you're running. And this is running locally. It's not hitting any of the APIs, by the way. It's all in the all in the binary that we downloaded. And this was a test. And we definitely got an access denied. This is what we saw here, right? Issues, you got an environmental issues, which was an access denied altogether. And what is the coverage? It's 0 right now. Now, if I want to just change to probably one of the success ones, sorry, let me just. Okay, my bad. Okay, I haven't downloaded it. My bad. Sorry, I think I downloaded the wrong file. This was the file. My bad. So this was the test that ran successfully. And here's the test instance. It navigated to 99acres.com, searched for Bangalore. These were the variables that I had set. Searched for the city, did assert a lot of things on the fly, and it was able to take a conclusion that this test ran actually. And this was everything working agentic in the background while I was taking a customer call yesterday altogether. And there were no issues, definitely. What was the coverage? I mean, like, this is the critical important part that is required to take a call if I can take the changes on production. And it was able to identify 13% of the acceptance criteria was passed. This is the test that I ran. So if I keep on, compounding, and if I run all the other tests, and if they keep on passing, the acceptance criteria is going to increase. And we'll talk more about evidence in the talks that we have scheduled during the conference, which is day after tomorrow. Anubhav is going to take all, where he's going to deep dive about the evidence altogether and how it is expected to work. Now, you can also see, all the cases that it verified and stuff like that. And this is what we're trying to power from Kane CLI in general. This is something that we want our customers and we want our teams and we want our engineers to use and be able to ship on production. So, AI has been accelerating development a lot. It has accelerated, n-folds. I cannot even compound that number altogether, right? But it's the teams that has to take a decision that are the things or are the changes done by the agents good enough to take on production? If not, roll back, let the agent fix it, and then a separate agent or a separate loop apart from these self-referential loop that takes the call and actually gives you an evidence that things are working fine. A green check could be a useful observation, but not the entire argument altogether. This is what Kane CLI is trying to solve here. So, in a nutshell, you build fast and you decide from evidence that you want to ship it on production or not, which is what was the intent, what was the change meant to be done, what happened to the relevant systems, say you added SSO, and what happened to the username and password login in the system, and what are the gaps and what are the things that are still not tested wherein it might require a human intervention altogether. So confidence becomes useful when accountable is when you actually have evidence to count on. This is what Kane CLI and the talk is all about. And very frankly, I would want all the engineers and everyone in the system to build fast, release fast, and make your systems and your harnesses be able to validate all the changes that you're shipping from all the ecosystems that you might be working on, apps, browsers, anything and everything. So yeah, this was more about me. I'll be happy to take up questions if you might have. Sorry, I'll just go to the.
So great session so far out, Prince. And I see a lot of people were also engaging in the chat window, looking at, especially the evidence part. It was amazing, super cool. And yeah, I see that there's also a message from our CEO Asad, who's saying that you have 10,000 credits free for all of you. So by all means, we will be sharing, the link to the product, which is right over here. Do feel free to check it out on the website as well. And with that said, let's head to Q&A. So let's start with this one. Could excessive self-validation actually make an agent less effective?
Not really. If you manage the context nicely, which is what the Kane CLI is all about, context management is the key critical principle. Excessive validation cannot make your systems less efficient if you know what has to be tested, and it's able to actually generate cases which are managed in a WKC part of it. So you do not keep on generating new stuff on the fly. You always have a reference of the context that is already catered to, and the new context, which is the surface script that we were talking about. So not really.
Cool. Let's take the other one. When static code, let me pin this on screen. When static code checks pass, but the agent fails live, what metrics or signals are best for detecting the gap before it hits production?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, and this was in the evidence pack itself, you derive your acceptance criteria from the requirement. And that is the metric that you would actually look for, not just if the tests are passing. Simple as that. So all the test has to be linked back to the actual acceptance criteria, which was derived from the actual context. And this metric is what's helping us out to make stabler releases in production without impacting any of our customers.
All right. So this is about your presentation. When you said that the harness you have built is working fine, is there any time where the harness is hallucinated? And how have you resolved that?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, like this is an unsolved problem. Agents and harnesses do hallucinate, which is why you have your validation layer. So one agent might hallucinate and generate a piece of code that was not useful. And this is the problem with self-referential loop, wherein the code being generated and the code UTs being written is being generated by the same system. This validation layer actually diversifies or splits down from one context window to a separate context window and helps you generate a test case which is purely disconnected from the source code. Now, with respect to hallucinations, yes, we have seen that in the past. A button is not visible, but it's actually visible on the screen. But this is a problem that with newer frontier models, they are getting solved very rapidly. So there is still chance, but it's less than 1% anymore now. This is what our benchmark says.
Awesome. And here's another great question on Kane CLI. The text mentions a context graph reporting 6 records verified in the parity. What exactly is a context graph in Kane CLI, and how does it prove parity between the original requirements and the generated use cases?
Okay, so if you just see back the recording, I had shown I had uploaded a PRD.md file, which was a 99 acres PRD. It was more about the search feature that was available on PRD. This is what's going to be ingested as a context to the Kane CLI. The context graph is basically you keep on adding more PRDs, you keep on adding more tickets. It's just going to figure out what are the common components and create a context graph out of it. Now, how does it prove a parity between the original requirement and the generated use cases? This is the part wherein you validate, you verify if the requirement that you pushed in and the use cases that was generated or the test cases that was generated do reside it, which is what human in the loop is all about. You do not let an autonomous system take all the call. You still have to validate, take a call if this looks good enough to go on production or to be generated as a test case.
Cool. So on to the next one. We see Kane CLI took a single PRD document and immediately split it into 4 distinct use cases. Does a human need to format the PRD in a specific way for the CLI to understand it so cleanly, or can it read messy unstructured documents?
It can read anything. So, I mean, frontier models can read videos, assets, and anything and everything else. It didn't generate immediately. It took like a couple of minutes, but since it's a conversation thread on Telegram, you didn't see the timings. But yeah, it can ingest any format of data.
And yeah, with that said, it's going to be a wrap for the Q&A so far. Thank you so much for everybody who has joined us. Thank you so much, Prince. That was an insightful session. I'm sure our viewers agree as well. I could see a lot of them appreciating it on the chat as well. Great to know how to actually trust what your agents are telling you.
Yeah. So we still have a workshop planned tomorrow and the after tomorrow, which is going to be led by Siddhant. You can take up those questions, the pending questions or your questions that you might have there. We also have a deep dive on the assurance layer via Shantanu Ali tomorrow itself, and a deep dive on the evidence layer via Anubhav day after tomorrow. So I'm hoping people show up there and you ask your questions there, whatever we might have missed out. Sorry for that.
Right. And all these questions would also be answered across our YouTube channel. In case you're not already subscribed to TestMu AI, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. You'll also find these in form of written content over our blog and other places. And last but not the least, feel free to share your learnings and experience so far over LinkedIn or X with the hashtag TestMuConf and tag us. You'll stand a chance to win prize worth up to $1,000, and the rest of the community also gets to pick up from what you're learning. TestMuConf is running all day long, so head back to the agenda, pick up the next one. Happy learning and happy testing, everyone.
Thank you.